Hi, and welcome to Arizona to Alberta. I'm Tracy Gray, and I've got Devin Gray, professional real estate agent with EXP and Mogul Realty Group here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And then down in the much warmer Phoenix, we have Diane Brennan, who is also a professional real estate agent and real estate investor.
With Coldwell Banker.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Get
Versus the unprofessional real estate agents. I like how you say professional real estate agents. I do believe there's unprofessional ones as well.
Okay, well, I'll give it to you now.
I was just covering your butt to make sure that the brokerage got mentioned, because I don't know down there, but we get in trouble if we don't say EXP. So
we do
EXP,
too.
EXP, Coldwell Banker, Coldwell Banker. Now we're good.
We do
and
too.
They're
Yeah.
both professional real estate agents. Talking together about the difference between buying real estate in Canada and in the States. Also, if you're interested in buying maybe a rental property or a place to live down in Phoenix if you're in Canada, or vice versa, then these are the two that you want to talk to. Plus, they're just a lot of fun. We started recording early on this show because you guys get busy with your chatter, and there's so much good stuff in there that we want to be sharing with everybody, especially because, Diane, you were just talking about how much you love Italy.
Yes. Got a trip later this year.
Yeah, I'm going to Italy. And
Again.
I have a podcast, so I always tell, because in between before we start, we're always talking about this stuff, and it's just like gold. It's like these great gems. And I'm like, save it for the air, save it for the air. So that's what I always say. And then the microphones go on, and there's like, everyone's
Crickets.
like tumbleweeds, because they've all
vented. All professional. Well,
Yes.
Blah, blah, blah.
And meanwhile, they have these little nuggets and stuff to share. But yes, I'm actually trying to get my US citizenship. My Italian citizenship. So I'm my Canadian, I'm US, and I'm trying to get my Italian, because in Italy, you can only spend 3 months there. So my retirement goal is to spend 6 months here, 6 months in Italy. So if you buy or sell with me, you will have a wonderful place in Italy to come visit as
That's
my
great.
guest.
Absolutely, yeah.
Remember us then, professional real estate agent Diane.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this will be, you've been to Italy before, and so tell us what's so magical about it.
Oh, it is gorgeous. So I've been to Italy. I try and go every year. It's my dad was born in Italy, and that has allowed me to hopefully get my citizenship. It's just beautiful. Like, I could go to Italy every year and not go anywhere else in the world. You've got everything there. You've got, the South is a lot different than the North. It's just beautiful. And it's a slower pace there. And, what's important to them is eating, which, I love. But what's important is not work. It's spending time with friends and family and enjoying life. And I think here in North America, we're always go, go, go. And it's work, work, work. And it's stress, stress, stress. And sometimes we put that ahead of what's really important and stuff. So I just love Italy. I love everything about it. Yeah.
I think there's definitely something magical about these are incredibly old countries and have a tremendous amount of history. There's a friend of mine that I was visiting with earlier this week, and he's got his daughter who's in the mid-20s that went over to Scotland pre-COVID, and so has been there for the past 3 years. They just went over in March to visit her. It's the first time they've seen her in person in 3 years. And so they were there for a week and a half, and he said it's just amazing, just the routines and the history. And he said, they're sitting in a pub, and there's this, small little plaque on the wall that says that the bar was started up in 1790.
Yeah.
These things, if these walls could talk, and the history and who knows the people that have been in that pub, and they're all have all this history. And as you talked about different values on life, and very, very set in their ways, which can be good and can also be bad. But it's interesting to be a part of that history, and it's just amazing to listen to him about that. And it sounds like you get caught up in that in Italy as well.
Yeah. And you know what, interestingly enough, have you guys ever done ancestry.com or 23andMe?
We have not.
Is that better? My audio? I moved the mic up.
That's all right. It's
What?
okay.
No, we can hear you good.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Yeah, actually,
I just realized.
technology-wise, we've been having some glitches on the show, but you look fantastic. You sound amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I fired my hair and makeup girl. This morning. Me. 'Cause I'm telling you, she needs some work.
Stick her up here. I could use one.
We got to send her back to school. Something's going on here. But it. Okay. So anyway, I was taking my renewal real estate classes here. You have to get 24 credits in 2 years. And anyway, I was taking it online. I finished the class and then you kind of have to be online for a certain amount of time before you can advance. It's a time restriction thing to make sure that you're spending the time focusing. So I looked up my family tree while I was doing that through ancestry.com. So it was unbelievable to find out. I actually found the records where my grandmother came over on a steamship from Poland. This is on my mom's side. And you see her name, she was 13 years old. And it really hits you like, wow, she must have been scared. Yeah. She's on this, and it was just like real. Like we all have these roots and a lot of us European roots. And especially in Canada, we have a huge Eastern European population and from wherever. So I really encourage everyone to just do that. And then ancestry.com, automatically their computers are quick. They search birth certificates, death records, all that kind of stuff. And they will pop up suggestions like you may be related to this person. So it's fascinating. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I've heard some other friends talk about those two websites, and we haven't done it yet, but it sounds very interesting, and it's always great to know where you're from.
Yeah. I have a cousin who did, and she said that she's got some descendants from Africa.
Yeah,
for
sure.
Run in my family line, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So stuff like that was surprising to see. And then she's been getting little snippets sent to her as they find more stuff about uncle of ours and that kind of thing. So it is really amazing.
Yeah. And then you can actually connect with the people, message with them and, hey, you might be my third cousin. And so
maybe we should start like a 23andMe for houses so people can get the stories on those.
Yeah, that might not be good for sales.
Although it would be interesting when you walk into these horrifically dilapidated houses that you wonder, like these things just didn't happen overnight. Like,
exactly.
You'll see this like stain or lump of whatever, and you're like was that like what was the start? Like was that the first thing? Was that like the like what's going like I think I'm gonna turn this into a dilapidated house.
What's the history on that?
Yeah, here's my first, I'm throwing this cup of coffee down and I'm not gonna clean that. Like what I'm just curious.
Right, exactly. What was going through their mind?
What started all this? What was the first thing that caused this house to need to be torn down?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because we really don't have the history of the home. We have the previous buyer, but that's about it.
That's right.
And the buyer and sellers don't normally talk. Here in the US on the East Coast, they actually sit across from each other at close and they exchange keys and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, but here, so two things that's interesting. So I actually do get my sellers to meet with the buyers and see if they have any extra questions. So we do that extra step. And that way the seller feels really confident that, the buyer's taking care of this place that they've loved. So they really like that, showing them how to do stuff. And then also I'm interested like what we can disclose here. Because I've had people say, are there ghosts in this house? And has anyone died in this home? What are you guys allowed in Canada to say about the home?
Well, first off, it doesn't come up very often, but every now and then I will get someone that'll say, what sort of history can you tell me about? Like, has anybody died in the house? But it really comes down to everything with stuff like that. Always goes back to it's to the discretion of the seller. If the seller wants to tell you, they can. If they don't want to tell you, they don't. Now, if there's something wrong with the house, material, we call it material latent defects. They have to disclose that. And so the examples would be fully finished basement and there's a 3-inch gash in the foundation. And there's been but even if there's been a history of water, but the issue has been fixed, they don't need to disclose it. But if there's an issue that is still going on, that's not easily seen, even in an inspection, that's a material latent defect. You have to disclose it. Now, if you aren't aware of it, so for example, I was showing a house earlier this week, and somebody said, "Hey, has there been any water issues in the basement?" And the listing agent responded, "Not since my owner purchased the house," which had only been 7 years, and the house was built in the early 90s. So, that's as far back as that they can say. If there was any water damage prior to, there's no ability to share that. And if the seller legitimately doesn't know about the material latent defect, then how do they disclose it? And that ultimately comes, that's the challenge, is basically, okay, did they know, but they're not telling you? So there is some investigations that have to go on to try to prove that the seller did know about it and decided not to disclose it.
Okay, and then a lawsuit would happen. So here, if you had a leak, and it's not current, you still have to disclose that and when it was repaired.
Oh, okay.
Yes, we have a seller property disclosure statement that the seller has to fill out themselves. The agent can't help, and they have to disclose. And I tell my clients, disclose, 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 because if they find something wrong, you knew about it, then you're subject to lawsuit and
Wow.
trouble.
Yeah,
So,
and on that note, most times in an inspection, the leaks like that leave scars, and so a lot of times it comes with the inspector saying, "Hey, I would ask about this," and invariably the seller will say, "Hey, yeah," and a lot of times they'll say, "Yeah, there was this issue and it's been fixed now." One of the funniest things that I find interesting is that we'll go into houses and there'll be the water stain on the roof, which instantly people go, "Oh my gosh, there's a leak."
right.
We ask the seller, and the seller says, "Oh yeah, there was a leak in the upstairs toilet 5 years ago, but we fixed it." So they fixed the leak, fixed all that stuff, but they never did fix the stain.
Nobody does.
I know.
No.
Nobody does.
And it's like, don't you think someone's going to ask about that?
Right.
You got to paint.
Yeah.
the whole
And then, of
ceiling
course, the
then.
buyer goes, "Is it really fixed?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks like it happened yesterday. It's like, no,
Well,
it's been there for 5 years. We just didn't do anything about it.
yeah. And another thing, when you don't fix that, if you're not going to take the time to fix that, because it's not like you're covering it, because of course you would disclose that anyways.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to take the time to paint over a stain, like what other ways are you not taking care of the house? So it makes
Right.
the buyer feel insecure
Yeah.
about the property. So it's essential to have it clean, have those stains painted. Of course, you're going to disclose it, but it just makes you feel like you're not taking care of
No,
the
we
property.
ran into a property or into a problem with an investment property. We had bought it, and there had been some water issues in the basement that the seller didn't disclose. And then after we bought it, we found out that this had been going on for a while. We actually found the previous owner by accident. We were looking for a contractor to fix it, and just
yeah.
randomly picked this contractor. It turned out he had actually owned the home before the person that we bought it.
Oh, wonderful.
Like, well, but he's like, "Oh yeah, I probably would have torn that down." And we're like, "Oh no." So that's
Oh,
how bad
wow.
the water was. But what we were told is that because they had tried to fix it, they laid concrete all around the outside of the house, hoping that would help for the runoff, for any water getting into the basement, that then they didn't have to disclose it.
Yeah.
So that was an issue here in Edmonton that we actually ran into for something that we were
Oh.
need to disclose.
Yeah, because he did
Interesting.
show it. So sat down, talked to a lawyer and all that stuff, and he says, "Well, they made every effort
Yeah.
to
remedy it.
Yeah.
remedy it, and it was a dry summer, so
Yeah.
he couldn't really ultimately find out. And then the year after we bought it, it was a very rainy summer, and that's where we found. But we did also hear that the amount of seepage that was in our basement after he had remedied it compared to this contractor we talked to, it had significantly improved, but it
Yeah.
just still was a bit of a problem. But I mean, this guy talked about how it was horrific. Like it used to
Oh, interesting.
be almost like a waterfall coming in there. So
An indoor pool.
yes, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
that's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I always encourage any buyers out there that are thinking of purchasing is go talk to the neighbors too during your due diligence, your inspection period, because they have a lot of information, neighbors that have been, in the neighborhood for years. And what do you know about the house, and how do you like living here, and all of that kind of stuff. So you can.
And
really
how did those current sellers treat the house?
That's
You
right.
know, and is there any issues that might have popped up, or things that they know they didn't necessarily fix? I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. And take it in context. We're in a seller's market here. So if the neighbors have some family members, you have to be careful
Yeah.
about what people are saying.
That's
So
true.
it was
Yeah.
funny. I was showing some buyers the other day, and it was so booked up, the showings, that we were in there with another group, and jokingly, I was like, "Look at that crack in the ceiling. Look at that crack all the way through the pool," because my buyer wanted it. Of course, I was just teasing, and they knew that, and we had a fun and stuff, but
Oh, the power you have, Diane. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this power?
yeah, we were just teasing, but you have to take that in context. So talk to a few neighbors, right?
Yeah,
Just
that due
don't
diligence.
you one source. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that due diligence is brilliant, because then we actually did that for another property we were looking at. We kind of suspected the whole basement had been renovated and looked amazing, but from the outside of the house, it didn't look like it had good drainage on it. It looked like water would go in. So I asked a couple of the neighbors, and they were more than happy to tell me, oh yeah, they complain about water in the basement all the time.
Yeah.
So we did not buy that one.
Yeah.
Good,
So
good,
I
good,
was
good
getting quite
deal.
shy. Yeah.
But we did want to talk about
Huge news for you guys.
big news,
That's
yes,
right, here
in
in
Canada,
Canada.
and kind of how that affects what's going on up here, and also if there's any signs of something similar happening down in the United States. So yesterday, being April 13th, the Bank of Canada announced a 0.5% rate hike on their policy interest rates, which is the largest increase in over 20 years. It moves the Bank of Canada rate to 1%, and they made it unbelievably clear that another interest rate will be coming, possibly by another 0.5%. And if that happens, then since January, it'll have moved 125 basis points. So they're calling it trying to get interest rates back to normal, and doing this because inflation in Canada is currently running at 6%, and the government tries to keep things at 2%. So there's a lot of people that are getting used to the idea. I mean, obviously we were below 2% in regards to interest rates on a mortgage for almost 3 years, so that's become the new normal. And in a lot of cases, it's going to put some concerns with some buyers. So, we're just right now talking to a lot of our clients about the pros and cons about what that brings. So, but it'll be interesting to see how that affects, especially with Canadian owners down in the United States, whether or not that puts them in a position, because everything is going to be more expensive potentially, just with inflation, and then also just the cost of living. And anyways, just wanted to share that with you and see your thoughts on that, Diane, from a U.S. perspective, and what the U.S. might be doing as well when it comes to interest rates.
Well, we're battling inflation down here too. And interest rates have been consistently rising, and everyone has been warned by that. So it sounds like you guys were shocked that happened.
Well, it's I think just
Yeah.
in the fact that the Bank of Canada gives every indication that something's coming, but it's still just the fact that it's happening. So I think that it's one of those things where cooler heads that understand and watch the economy and all that stuff will know that it's coming and will be adjusting accordingly. But there's just Joe Blow homeowner that is kind of been kicking around, maybe going into to buy a house, and finally gets around talking to a mortgage broker or their banker, and goes in and goes, what happened to 1.6% interest rates? It's like, well, where have you been? So that, because there's a lot of people that they don't pay attention to that stuff, and so
Yeah.
that will catch them off guard. And so we are telling people that again, this is moving back to normalcy. That the three kind of messages is this is moving back to normalcy. Nobody should have thought that these emergency rates of less than 2% were going to stick around forever when it comes to mortgage rates. The second thing is it's a great opportunity to lock in. The bank has said there will be another increase in June, so people should be going and locking in interest rates now, because they last for 60 to 90 days. And then the third thing is that for those people that just automatically react to bad news like this and put the brakes on and say, oh, I'm going to get out of the housing market and see what happens, that's actually going to take a few buyers out of the market, which is going to ease that pressure a little bit. So rather than seeing all these multiple bids and prices going for $30,000-$40,000 over list, you might actually be able to walk in and get an at list. Well, first off, secure a property, get it potentially at list, or maybe only a little bit above, or possibly even a little bit low. So there is some silver linings to stuff like this. It's we've been talking to our clients. It's just a matter of not being necessarily worried about all of the news and how this could affect the general population. This is about how it affects you individually and making your decision accordingly.
So we have, first of all, we knew this coming, as you guys did, and you follow it. So I'm telling all of the buyers, I told you, with my clients, because a lot of people also had this misconception that prices were going down. They have PTSD from the last market crash.
Right.
And we're saying, no, the prices aren't going down. But, the headlines really put fear into people, right? So what can you do? You can only do so much, repeat. And they're listening to the headlines in the news, and online, that are clickbait and everything else that, are warning of a housing crash. And We find here in Arizona that people do not put off home buying. They just buy a smaller house. So historically, higher interest rates doesn't matter. People still need places to live. We're having the supply problem. So that's putting us in more of a predicament because yes, interest rates may be increasing, but we still don't have the supply. But people, that doesn't stop people from buying. The fact we have nothing for them to buy is what's stopping it more than interest rates. And we're at 4.5%. I think our average. We got down into the twos, but a few 2.75, and ours are 30 for 30-year mortgages. Are you guys doing 30 years again? Because I know for a while there, when I moved, you guys were just doing 5-year and 7, and it was like adjustable rate.
Yeah, so the way that it works is there's an amortization period, which is usually 25 years. Sometimes you can find 30 years, but then the term is 5 years. So so 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. So you amortize the entire payment of the mortgage over either 25 or 30 years, but then every 5 years on average is basically what most people look at. You will go in and renegotiate. And from a standpoint of people that are like either investors or people that need a little bit of a savings or a bit of relief on their mortgage payments, if you get that amortization down to say 15 or 12 years. In some situations, depending on how your mortgage is structured, you might be able to stretch that amortization back out to 25 years, which will lower it down. It just means that instead of paying your mortgage off in 12 years, you're back to paying it off in 25 years. But at least you can lower your your mortgage payments. And that's a big move for investors as well. And we even did that where we wanted to, we had about 12 years left on a rental property, and we just wanted to increase the cash flow. So when our mortgage had an opportunity to stretch out the amortization back to 25 years, it cut our mortgage in half, and all that money, that savings, which was about, I think it was an $800 mortgage. It was just a small condo. It went from $800 to $400, and so that $400 went straight to cash flow because that's what we were focused on with that property.
That goes straight to your kids' college fund.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yes.
Coffee fund.
Yeah.
Oilers tickets, nights out with the boys.
Yeah.
Important things.
Right.
Being
Right.
fiscally responsible.
We have our priorities. Yeah.
Right. So you can only renew or look at your interest rates at a certain date.
Well, if you're so we've got fixed and variable. So fixed means that everything stays firm. So if let's say the bank is offering a fixed rate on a 25-year amortization at say 3.95%. Over 5 years, it means that you are absolutely locked in regardless of whatever happens. It doesn't matter what happens with the fluctuating rates. You're locked in for 3.95.
But just for 5 years?
For 5 years. Now you can do 7 or you can do 10, but if you do longer, that 7-year might be 4.15. And if you do
I look like shocked? Because to me, that's like you're playing roulette.
Well, you absolutely are, because you can also, because the other way you can do it is ride the waves of the variable, right? Which allows you to basically, so let's say the fixed rate on a 5-year is say 3.95, the variable might be 3.4. So what the banks and all that stuff will say was, well, yeah, it's low now, but you know what happens if it goes like what's happening right now? Basically anybody on a variable has seen their interest rates go up, seen their interest rates go up by 0.75%, and might see it go up another 0.5% in June if you're riding that wave. But the benefit that comes with that is flexibility. Again, especially from an investor standpoint, people want to know that they've got the ability to sell their homes without a big penalty. Usually with a variable, well, actually not usually, with a variable, it's 3 months worth of interest is what basically you would have to pay. Whereas with a fixed, if let's say you sign up for a fixed interest rate on 5 years and you sell your house after a year, well, you owe a huge potential penalty of 4 years. I can't completely remember the math on that.
Do I look shocked right now?
$10 or $12,000. So
because fixed here is 30 years, so it's security.
Yeah.
And
well,
you can
also write your interest off in the United States. If you can write it off, you can't.
Yes,
you can't
yes, we can,
right?
and I do. every penny. But
That's why we go. That's why some people never pay their mortgages off. Why would you?
So here's the deal though. So fixed is 30 years. So you have comfort knowing that your mortgage rate, your interest rate, your property taxes may go up and down. And then people kind of freak out over the instability of that. But you are set for 30 years. You don't, and you can refinance at any time with no prepayment penalty.
Wow. That would be the difference
Wow.
between having 5 big banks and having, hundreds
They
of banks.
get you because
Yeah.
how do you, as a family with everyone has their jobs, but we've got inflation, we've got problems with the economy. Some people are losing their jobs. And then you've got that you can only refinance at a certain time after 5 years, and then it's still not guaranteed what the interest rate. But I guess the banks do. I mean, there's not huge swings. Is that correct?
They're nowhere near as much as the perception might be, and that would be the thing where, especially when that example I gave you, where a 5-year fixed at 3.95 compared to a variable that might be 3.4, it might be suggested, who knows where rates will be in 5 years?
Yeah.
It might be 5%, and you could have locked in at 3.95.
But only for 5 years. So to me,
Well,
that's not even
yeah.
locking
Well, and
in.
again, so the longer you lock in, the bank will actually increase it. They really play on the the stability of they might say, well, if you can afford $1,500 a month on a mortgage payment, wouldn't it be nice to know that that's what you're paying for the next, say, 10 years, right? And so for some people that are very rigid in regards to their monthly payments and their job is secure and all sorts of things like that, that works out well. I always go back to, the majority of seasoned investors will always roll the dice and say, usually the variable rate will always stay less than the fixed rate. And then it also allows you that flexibility of not having these massive payouts if you have to break that mortgage if you go and sell your house. And interestingly enough, because of that, it's really geared up because the majority of term, and that's what they call it, a term of 5 years. That's where you see a lot of people buying and selling houses every 5 years. Obviously everybody's set up differently, but usually you can count on, even from a real estate standpoint, it's like, oh, that person's been in that house for 5 years, or 4.5.
Yeah,
Might be time to give them a call.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Here we
Yeah.
can check their equity, right? Our title companies, which act like the paralegal to an attorney in Canada, our title companies look up that information for us. Like, hey, they have this much equity. They might be thinking of selling. But definitely with your loans, mortgages, you can track that way. It's just how many people get into a situation where they can no longer afford their house in Canada.
Well, it definitely happens with just people that aren't necessarily managing their circumstances financially very well. We have a percentage of foreclosures that come on the market. It was interesting going through COVID when COVID hit in March, and there was all of that 6-month breathing period where nobody had to pay mortgage payments for 6 months.
Everybody?
Yeah,
Nobody.
anybody in Canada that didn't want to pay, you just had to apply. But pretty much, so there was hundreds of thousands of people, including us,
Yeah,
on
me
some.
too.
It was like, yeah, sure, like not pay mortgage payments for. But what they did was they tacked on all the missing interest. So they basically delayed you paying.
Yeah.
I mean, they got their money.
Mm-hmm.
They delayed. What happened is after things were getting going, they recalculated and said, okay, well, you now owe another 6 months of principal because it's not like we said you don't have to pay this.
Mm-hmm.
And then they recalculated the 6 months of interest that they never received and tacked that on. So a lot of people at the end of 6 months saw their mortgage payments increase by
Go up.
$75, $100, $125 to absorb that interest rate. So
They have that down here too, programs,
Okay.
but people were concerned because I couldn't take advantage of it because I wanted to refinance. And if I would have done that, then I was disqualified for refinancing. So I continued with
Okay.
my, with
there's
my,
definitely some circumstances that came into play as well when it came to refinancing that I can't remember the specifics and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But so anyways, we as the investor company that we're a part of, we actually did one of our monthly meetups on foreclosures because there was so much interest in like all these people, they clearly couldn't handle that house because that's why they had to take advantage of the 6 month no payments. And so they thought there would be this flood of foreclosures on the market. And it was, we did it based on demand, but ultimately, you know, banks don't want to own property. They want you to pay your mortgage payments. So it never really happened because they were working with people. You know, they don't go into foreclosure right away, but we did see a bit of an uptick last spring and into summer because, you know, by that time, you know, they realized after 5, 6, 7, 8 months that people simply just weren't going to be able to recover, and they started to go into foreclosures. But I didn't necessarily see any sort of massive uptick. And the thing is, as well, as unlike I think what, you know, happened in the States back in 2008, 2009 with this mass amount of people losing their homes, you know, we're you know, more social mindset. I think it never got to that, but I think if all of a sudden foreclosures are hitting a certain percentage, I think the government would have stepped in and basically said, you know, the bank's not foreclosing on any more homes. We never got to that. But yeah, people lose their homes, unfortunately, all the time. And it just, you know, and you know, a lot of times, you know, people instantly think, well, they're just bad with money. Well, it could have been a death. It could have been.
No, I was going to say,
Yes.
yeah, there's not to even judge them. It's situations out of under your control. I mean, you get sick in the US here, you know.
Right. And and there's no universal health care or anything. And if you don't have proper insurance, and that can just decimate you for sure.
Yeah. So there's lots of reasons. So yeah, definitely not a matter of mismanaging money.
Well,
That would just be my own personal
I don't want to
situation.
end things on a sad note, but we do have to start wrapping up. Did you
I know.
guys
Okay.
wanna-
Keep going forever.
I know, you guys.
Yeah.
That's what I love
We
about
should
both
just
of you.
talk for 6 hours and
Yeah.
then edit like.
Yeah, just chop it up.
You make me
For
edit
sure.
it, so that's why
That's
that's
right.
a good
Yeah,
idea
Tracy will
for
have to
you.
do it. So that's why she's cutting it off.
Yeah, that's right. So it's easier if I just say, okay, guys, time to wrap it up. So, Diane, do you want to start? Is there anything that you want to add?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for watching. And if you have any questions about buying property in the US in the Phoenix metro area, I'd love to help. And my email is can'trememberheremail@gmail.com. I'm with Coldwell Banker Realty. My phone number is 602-620-2277. And even if you're not, you know, planning to do anything in the next year, if you just want to pick my brain and just, you know, chew the fat, talk about real estate, I'm more than happy to do that.
That's right. And she is a professional real estate agent.
Professional.
Get a hold of her now to get on your list for when she has a place in Italy that you can come visit with her.
There you go.
Yes,
And
next time
we'll talk one time because they are selling homes for $1 in Italy.
Oh, wow.
Okay. That'll be
Little teaser
right?
for next
I
week.
love
And
it.
yeah, and we're going to be here every week. So please subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us each week. We'll have more information.
And then Devin, is there anything that you want to say?
Yeah, so I'm with EXP Realty, and which is the fastest growing brokerage.
Oh, here we go. There's a little rivalry between brokerages, everybody.
Just a little. Okay, do I have to separate you two on Zoom?
Yeah, but we are with. I'm also with the Mogul Realty Group, which are investor-focused group of realtors. We've got an office in Edmonton and Vancouver. To reach me via email, it's Devin with an I at mogulrg.com. Cell number is 780-951-9279.
Awesome.
Super.
Okay, great job, guys. Thanks so much. And like Diane mentioned, we will see you guys again next week. Bye. Thanks for watching.